Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Grand Page. I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost. I wanted to talk today about my thoughts on Superman 2025. It's been out now for a while. It's out on streaming on HBO Max. You can get it on DVD. It's accessible in all kinds of places, and I also feel like a lot of the craziness around it has died down a bit. I've also had a chance to let my own thoughts culminate on it. And again, I feel like it's always worth bringing up sort of one's history around a character before going into a new iteration of said character. Probably my biggest experience with Superman, just in general, would have to be the 90s cartoon. And honestly, just if I haven't said it already, I likely have said it a whole bunch. But honestly, it's always worth repeating. That DC animated universe, I still argue to this day, is probably the first place I would go to when recommending any of these characters, particularly Batman and Superman. And that's not meant to be a dig against Superman 2025. It's just more so sort of my experience with it, the accessibility of the show to basically anybody, right? That sort of thing. But that's my probably most nostalgic experience with Superman, where I would send people to if they were looking for recommendations, that sort of thing. I've also read plenty of the comics. Probably, my biggest. So I remember reading. I forgot. I think it was Jeff Loeb who was on Superman for a bit with Jim Lee. I forget exactly what time period, but that might have been around when Batman Hush, the individual comics were coming out, because my dad was collecting those back and forth. I don't remember a lot of the story, to be fair, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, simply because I just don't know anything about it. In recent years, I've read other comics of Superman. Superman Earth 1 is great. And for those of you that don't know, a lot of the inspiration I feel like for Man of Steel came from Superman Earth 1. And so anybody who had problems with Man of Steel but then don't have problems with Earth 1, you got that to deal with, just saying. But Earth 1, volumes 1 through 3, I think are all really good. I think it's pretty unanimous that 2 was the weaker of the 3, but doesn't mean it wasn't good. I recently reread it, and that was still a very, very good read. So Superman Earth 1. What else do I have back there? I have Superman Birthright. That was a good read. Interesting. Uh, Sort of an not an interesting take. What is it? It was just a little different, but it was still very much Superman. Jeff Johns did this is probably one of my favorite Superman stories, but also really sad. Did a story called Superman Last Son, and it's a very sad story, but also a really good Superman story. I definitely recommend that as a comic for sure. So yeah, the Superman animated series. I had a few comics there that I had experience in reading, either in recent years or when I was a kid. Also, watched the Christopher Reeve Superman, great Superman movie. Might get a little flack for this, but uh, it's not dated in its characterization of Superman necessarily, but it is dated in its presentation. And maybe this is my nostalgia talking, but I feel like the 90s Superman is much more approachable than the 70s Superman, and I don't think that's just a time difference either, right? Like there's still movies and shows that we can watch from the 70s now, and it's not just nostalgia, right? Whereas I really feel like that 70s cheese is really coming into the Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, and that's not necessarily a knock against it. I still like probably after the animated series, I'd probably recommend the Christopher Reeve Superman just because of how well they do Superman in that movie. So great Superman movie. Really love Christopher Reeve, and then I'm a bit of a Snyder apologist. I like Man of Steel. Not only do I like it, I rewatch it. I understand some criticisms people have of it, but I don't think that those criticisms are 100% fair. I actually do a little deep dive on Man of Steel. I have a previous video on that. I'll probably link that somewhere in this video in case anybody wants to watch that. But bottom line, I'm a bit of a Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Snyderverse apologist. Certainly not saying that I would recommend those movies first as introductions to these characters, but that I do think Snyder does some interesting things with the characters that are worth looking at. So there's Man of Steel. I think that's a good segue into my actual experience with the 2025 Superman. Overall, I will say it was good, and I think it's at least worth a one-time watch. I was looking forward. First of all, I wasn't one of those that like was like, I hope it's good. I hope it's good. No, like I was genuinely interested. The movie looked good, and I did have that time period where I was like, I guess a bit more nihilistic in my approaches to these, and my opinion on how I approach stories and stuff have changed since then, and I try to approach things more with an open mind, because if we want to keep these characters around, we got to keep telling new stories as much as possible, and so we got to give these things a chance, and then we just give it fair criticism. So I really did enjoy my first watch of 2025 Superman, and it looked good. I was looking forward to it. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of James Gunn, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit in the video today. But my overall impressions is that it was good. It was good for a first time watch. But then I tried watching it a second time, and it was much more difficult. And so, what I would say this movie is good for is that it's good for a one time watch, and then you just watch clips of your favorite parts later on YouTube rather than watching the whole thing again. Because there are. The film is very disjointed, and part of that is the James Gunn humor, but I would argue actually it has more to do with how much is going on. And I don't know if that's maybe an old man thing like me, where it's like, I want less things going on, I want to be able to focus on something, versus like being able to flip between things back and forth constantly and having a lot of different things going on, and immediately having a setup and exposition and just jumping right in. Maybe that works a bit better with today's audience. Obviously, the movie did very, very well in theaters, which means it reached an audience. And so, more particularly, like, I have heard around, like, the YouTube algorithm and stuff, that, like, Superman 2025, the new Fantastic Four film, the Absolute comic series, is starting to introduce these characters to a new generation. And the fact that these things are sticking with them and it's helping these new properties move forward suggests that there's this new audience that's tapping into these characters. This video isn't meant to speculate on that, but it's just something that's been noticed, right? So all that to say, this movie is very busy, and that might be less of a criticism and more of a I don't like the flitting back and forth, and I want to be able to focus on something. Not to say that there isn't something to focus on, but that there's just a lot of different branches going on. Here we'll get into some of the spoiler territory, and just some overall discussions about things that I like and things that I don't like, and stuff like that. Something that I really liked that might be some people might consider. I don't know how I feel about that. They sort of, I don't know if you'd call it like a remix, but they took the original John Williams score from the Christopher Reeve Superman, and either they, I don't think it's actually a remix. I think you would say that they added to it. And while the original Christopher Reeve Superman score, very iconic, very uplifting, and has that sort of, I guess, positive, uplifting aspect to it, there's a certain level of melancholy in this new remix or edition that I really like. It incorporates this sort of self-reflectiveness, and internal struggle, which I think is very well illustrated in the movie. I did a short on this. I recently changed my format to doing shorts to doing longer form videos, because of what I intend to do with the channel. But I did a short on this about how sort of the main point of the movie is to illustrate, like, all these things happen to Superman over and over and over again. Like, the movie opens up with him, getting beat up, losing his first fight. And then he's, trying to save this kaiju, and they end up having to kill it, and he's not happy about that. He finds out that his parents sent him to Earth to conquer, and he's dealing with that struggle. He's captured by Lex Luthor, and he's imprisoned. The movie is constantly hammering home that despite being, despite the struggles, that overall, not perfectly, but overall, Superman chooses to do the right thing over and over and over and over and over again, at his own detriment often. And so I feel like the score does a good job of reflecting that, as the movie goes on. So I really like that score. Again, I don't know if you call it a remix or they added to it or whatever the case, but I think it's a really beautiful sort of new score for Superman. Something that really irks me about this film, actually there's at least two things that really irks me about this film, is that interview between Superman and Lois, because he was dressed as Clark, but he was acting like Superman. I don't think that's been accurately reflected on, because neither one of them are totally innocent. And I think it's pretty well known that Superman wasn't innocent in that interview at all. Like, he wasn't being what's the word? Like, throughout the interview, he signed up for an interview and thought he was going to get special privileges, essentially, because it's Lois Lane. And while Lois Lane acts like she's being all objective and everything, I'm sorry, bringing up the super shit, that was not called for at all in context. So they're talking about how people are concerned about their personal privacy, and this alien who can go anywhere and do anything and nobody can stop him. And then she goes into the media aspect of it, and she says, hashtag super spy, right? That relates to the conversation. Then she says, hashtag super shit. That has nothing to do with the conversation that she's having with Superman. She knew that was going to get under his skin. Now, I don't entirely blame her, because she likely does that with all of her interviews. So there's character consistency there. However, this reflects, should she be getting under people's skin when she's reporting on them, particularly in a way that is disingenuous. They're talking about him and the sort of security and privacy logistical problem that he creates as Superman with his abilities. And the hashtag super spy relates to that. But then she brings up hashtag super shit. That has nothing to do with it. She knew what she was doing. She wanted to get under his skin. She wanted that emotional outburst. And I do agree, he's acting like a bit of a baby. There's two sides to that. And it all comes down to this. Do we want to be able to relate to Superman, or do we want him to be sort of this perfect character, right? If we want to be able to relate to him, he's got to have some flaws. Him having an emotional outburst about that, a certain phrase getting under his skin, that's a way for us to relate to him and have a little joke in there. Whereas if he's supposed to be this being that we're supposed to look up to, and that he's supposed to inspire us, we're supposed to aspire to be him, right? That maybe something like that shouldn't really get under his skin so much. So I feel like nobody's really talking about that, and it really irks me because, especially with the Lois Lane bit, everybody's acting like, oh, she was just conducting an interview, she was doing the right thing. No. That brings into question her ethics on conducting interviews, which was interesting. I'm not saying she shouldn't have done it. I'm saying that she's, that she's not sort of this perfect reporter either. That's what I'm trying to get at more than anything. The other thing that works really well, but on the other end is also kind of weird. I loved that moment with Pa Kent and Superman. That moment where Superman goes home, he's dealing with what he learned about his parents and how they sent him to conquer and whatnot. And they have that interaction with each other, and Pa Kent tells him, we're not here to tell you what to do, who to become. We're here to give you tools so you can make a fool of yourself just like we do. That's a really beautiful moment. And some people have said, like, oh, you got Pa Kent crying and it's all emotional and everything. I'm sorry. Like, every son, to some extent, has always wanted to hear from his dad that he's proud of him. And if you don't want that, then you just have, deep-seated psychological issues about it. I'm just going to leave it at that. Because every son wants to hear that. Or maybe not even from their dad, but they want to know that someone is proud of them, that they're doing a good job, that they should keep doing what they're doing, sort of thing. And so, very, very beautiful moment, but heavily undercut by that stupid joke about Jonathan being mush. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with Ma Kent commenting on Pa Kent being a big old mush, right? Nothing wrong with that at all. The problem is that she keeps saying it when it's obvious, but she's saying it as if it's not obvious. So earlier, Superman in a weakened state gets taken back to Pa and Ma Kent's house. He's incapacitated, and you clearly see Pa Kent kind of in distress a little bit. Like, hey, is he gonna be okay? Is our son gonna be all right? And there's nothing wrong with showing that, right? There's nothing wrong with a father being concerned for his son and his well-being. And then Ma Kent comes in, oh, don't you worry about him. He's just a big old mush. Yeah, we know. We see that. It's clearly illustrated here. It would have been better, more accurate if Pa Kent were acting all stoic, all tough, all this other stuff, and then Ma Kent come in with that comment of, "Oh, don't you mind him? He's just a big old mush." Right? It creates that irony, and then we get that beautiful moment later where Pa Kent tells Superman how proud he is of him, and they have that emotional moment, this actual moment where Pa Kent is showing his big old mush side, right? So I feel like there was a bit of a disconnect there, not accurately illustrated whatsoever, and I just feel like they could have done a lot better there. Excuse me. Those were sort of my big things that popped up in the movie that kind of bothered me a little bit. Again, I definitely recommend watching it one time. I don't think this is a repeat watch. I think this is a find some good clips and rewatch it that way. We'll see how well the rest of the sort of James Gunn headed films go for the DCU. Supergirl, she had a funny intro. I don't know. I'll have to. The movie's obviously not out yet. I don't know if I'll go see it. The trailer doesn't really convince me to go see it. Jason Momoa as Lobo, I think, is great. But there's nothing there that really sells me on going to see it necessarily. But we'll have to wait and see. I've never been like super sold on Supergirl either. And to be fair, it's not like she's marketed to me either, right? Supergirl, for the most part, is marketed to girls, get them into the comic space, that sort of thing. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on Superman 2025. Definitely worth a one-time watch, but definitely I would recommend, instead of watching it again, just finding clips online. Anyways, I, as always, am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost.